Yes, so thank you very much. I think it's important for us to, first of all, appreciate how wealthy the continent is when it comes to natural resources, and the fact that Africa as a continent is a contributor to the significant global production process when it comes to finished products in electronics, vehicles, and so on and so forth. And the role the extractive sector plays in that value chain is something that the continent needs to start or continue strengthening to ensure that the benefits begin to trickle down to citizens as well. We are here this week with, in partnership with the Africa Union Development Agency, NEPAD, COMESA, to walk through with negotiators and representatives from the Ministries of Mines in 14 African countries to work with them on how to strengthen their negotiation positions, to look at how they can review and reform some of their laws, their regimes, in order to make sure that the countries are getting the maximum benefit from the extractive sector, and ensure that also that the companies that are entering into our countries to exploit the mining sector or the extractive sector at large are actually paying their fair share and their correct amount of taxes on the continent, as opposed to it leaving the continent into different jurisdictions. You know, many contracts that have been entered to are very old. Some of them were entered even before the independence of many of our countries. And it is time for them to be reviewed, renegotiated. And there's nothing stopping the sovereign states from actually going back and trying to reopen these contracts for renegotiation. What is important is when they do embark on that process of renegotiating the contracts is to ensure that they are well equipped with the strategies and the objective of what they want to get out of those contracts. Many a time, what we're still witnessing is that there are challenges both at the technical level but also at the political level, where the contracts tend to be some of the same that have been signed in the past. So it is an opportunity that we are presented with at this during this week to be able to engage with member states and support them to actually design strategies that can benefit their contract renegotiations. Legal fees are very, very, very expensive, and countries and governments have to invest in those sorts of legal fees or lawyers to be able to help them renegotiate their contracts. However, a starting point could be to use services that are provided by organizations like the one I work for, the International Senior Lawyers Project, where we begin the process in supporting governments in the initial stages of renegotiating and reviewing their contracts. We offer pro bono legal advice to governments across 5 different thematic areas: tax, anti-bribery and corruption, natural resources, community development, and trade and investment. And we are here in collaboration with the Africa Union Development Agency, NEPAD, and COMESA to support this process of strengthening the work that's being done by the member states. And at least in the beginning and in the initial stages of reviewing contracts, services that, like ISLPs, can be offered on a pro bono basis, and that can lay the foundations for then procuring professional legal fees and legal firms that can then build up on the case. The benefit of having access to pro bono legal advice is that you're getting, the governments are getting top-end legal advice from lawyers who are currently practicing or who are in academia or who are recently retired and have worked in these different scenarios for a very long time, and it's coming at a no cost. So from that point of view, I'm very optimistic, but also there is a good, there's the beginnings of political will to sit down by the governments to sit down and relook at these contracts, relook at the treaties that they've been signed, that they have signed and gotten into, and begin to review them with the view of renegotiating. There are several examples across the continent where this is happening: Uganda, Liberia, Senegal, Tanzania, where the governments have taken a very strong view about the treaties that were signed 3 or 4 decades ago. So yes, I am optimistic that with the correct set of expertise, the political will and the technical know-how, that the governments will be able to be in a stronger position to maximize the benefits that accrue from the extractive sector. I think there are two ways of looking at it. The work that ISLP does is very much client-led and client-driven. So if there is a request from a government, let's say in the DRC, that would like to support, would need that sort of legal support and advice on how to develop contracts and negotiating strategy on cobalt, then yes, certainly we would be willing to see how we can provide that support. The second point is how also we integrate the development agenda of our countries. We can't see the extractive sector as a standalone sector. And in this sense, there's an important need to integrate across the value chain and bring in other sectors within the country in the first instance before we start looking at the global trading system. We could, as part of the negotiating strategy, ask that some of the components that are being used in the technology space to be set up and maybe developed in the countries where the minerals are being found. Or alternatively, we could use another tactic where the assembly of the gadgets or the finished products are being done in the countries where the minerals are being found, but the processing can be outsourced. So it's just about how do you develop your strategy with the investor and with other sectors across the economy to ensure that it's a more holistic, integrated approach to development, but also to ensure that the minerals are serving a multitude of purposes, and it's not just about revenue generation, it's also about creating jobs, it's about industrialization, and ultimately, in line with Vision 2063, it's a transformative agenda that the sector is contributing to. Governments are sovereign states that have the power to decide and determine whether the mining and extractive sector at large will be a transformative sector for the continent. They alone hold the key to unlocking the potential. It is not the investors, it is not the citizens, it's the governments, because they are the sovereign states. They are the ones who are the custodians of the minerals that are beneath the earth. And that is the biggest thing that I've learned here today, this week, that the member states represented all have the power to decide how to unlock the potential of their sector. I just want to encourage the Africa Union Development Agency, NEPAD, and COMESA to continue this fantastic work that they're doing. This is the 5th edition of the Regional Dialogue on Contract and Fiscal Regime Negotiations in the sector. We hope that there'll be a 6th that covers North Africa. But also the important thing following after that is to do real-life-based scenario planning with individual member states. And ISLP would be very glad and happy to work with AUDA, NEPAD, COMESA, and other regional economic communities to supporting member states in ensuring that they get the best out of the sector. Thank you very much.